Today, we're talking about trends that need to die, and I'm going to tell you about 5 things that you absolutely should not do when you're running simple A/B tests. These things are wrong, and I see them so many times, but you should not be doing them. What are they, and what should you be doing instead? Let's take a look. Now, we are going to be focusing on a simple A/B test, a button color test. And when we look at this test, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't run a button test, even though they're the butt of many, many jokes like this funny meme here. I also won't tell you that you can't get value out of running a super simple test like a button color test. I actually think you can get tremendous value, and you're going to see why in a second. And I will tell you that you should not make these mistakes when running a simple study, because there's 5 crucial things that this study shows that you absolutely should not be doing. These are trends that are happening all the time, and they need to die. Now, who am I and why should you even listen to me? Well, I have over a decade of CRO and A/B testing experience. I've run, reported on, and seen thousands of A/B tests. I've founded the go-to A/B test case study resource, Guess the Test, and I put findings into practice through my award-winning consulting firm, Convert Experts. When I'm not working with clients, I'm also teaching at one of the top business schools in the world through Queen's University. I give webinars like this one, I give training sessions, and I'm currently preparing a course for LinkedIn Learning. And as a result of all these efforts, I've been fortunate enough to achieve lots of awards. I've been awarded the Top A/B Testing Influencer Award, Top Women Experimenter, and CEO of the Year. So I've seen a lot of tests. I've seen a lot of things right with tests. I've also seen a lot of things go wrong with tests. And we're going to be exploring one case study specifically on button color, looking at all the things that could possibly go wrong in a simple test like this that have indeed gone wrong. Now we're going to play a little game. I want you to guess which test you think won. Version A with the yellow button or version B with the orange button. Now, don't worry, not too much pressure before you guess, then I put you on the spot here. We're going to look at the test in just a little bit more depth, and I'll tell you a bit about it. So for this test, the company who ran it was looking at the click-through rate, clicking on the button and clicking to actually register for an email sign-up to get email sign-up updates about a new housing development that was going into place. They ran the test both on desktop and mobile, and the test was targeted at anyone coming to the site. These were primarily house hunters in Canada who were looking to buy a new home. And I won't tell you the name of the organization. We're going to keep them anonymous to protect the innocent. But this was a real life test run by a real life organization. Now, again, which version do you think won? The yellow button or the orange button? So go ahead and write it down, whisper it to a friend, think it in your head, yellow or orange. Version A, yellow. Version B, orange. And I'm going to give the big reveal in a second. Are you ready? Dun, da, da. The answer is version A, yellow button. So if you guessed the yellow button, you had a 50-50 chance. Congrats to you. Mostly. But in fact, there was actually no real clear winner because there were so many problems with the way this simple button color test was run. Now, that said, if you did guess version A, overall, button A, the yellow button, was declared the winner uh, loosely. And we'll go through that in a minute. But should it have been declared the winner? I don't know. We're going to take a look at that. So keep this in mind, because the things we're going to go through are 5 testing trends that absolutely must die. So first off, I didn't tell you this, but when I had you guess version A or version B, they didn't just look at version A or version B. They actually looked at 4 different variants: a dark blue button, a yellow button, a teal button, and an orange button. But not only that, they looked at it across desktop and mobile. And you can see here the desktop experience is quite a bit different than the mobile experience. Now, pay attention to these numbers right here. This is the number of visitors that saw the desktop experience or the mobile experience. And if we add these numbers together, about 6,000 and about 16,000, we get about 22,000 visitors total across what would effectively be considered 8 different experiences, 4 on desktop and 4 on mobile. So we have 22,000 visitors across 8 different variants. Now, my question to you is that enough traffic? And if you are experienced with A/B testing, you're going to go, no way, that's not nearly enough of a sample. And so this is the first testing trend that absolutely needs to die. Don't run A/B tests on very low samples. So what is a sample? A sample is both traffic, the number of visitors to the variant, as well as the number of conversions. And it really does depend how much traffic you need, but you can use a sample size calculator like this one. And as a very, very minimum, most A/B testers will tell you you need at least 30,000 visitors per variant and 300 conversions per variant. But really, if you're going to run a truly trustworthy test, it's more like about 120,000 visitors per variant. Now, as I mentioned, this test had 22,000 visitors in total across 8 variants. So definitely did not have the traffic needed to run a trustworthy test. And by splitting such a low sample, 22,000 visitors, into multiple variants, into those 8 variants, it completely watered down the results. So if you are going to run a low traffic test, hopefully nothing less than 30,000 visitors per variant. If you're going to do it, make sure you take the data with a grain of salt, but absolutely, positively do not split it into something like 8 variants because you're just completely going to just dilute your results and your data. So do not split low sample tests into multiple variants. And especially if the variant changes are something so small as button color, because you're really not going to be able to take away a lot from that. Now, there are other things that you can do, and we'll talk about that in a second. But testing trend that needs to die, number one, don't be running low sample tests, and absolutely don't be splitting low sample tests into multiple variants, especially variants that are pretty meaningless. That's number one. Number two.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch. Now back to the episode.
If you are running tests and you're running tests against desktop and mobile or segmenting the data across desktop and mobile, which I definitely recommend you do, then make sure that you have the same control version or the original version that you're testing against across desktop and mobile. Now, in this study, they didn't. And you may be going, how dumb is that? This happens all the time. I see it all the time. There'll be a different version for desktop, that's the control, than on mobile. And in this case, the desktop was a yellow button, and on mobile, it was a blue button. And when you go and you try and look at results and you say, okay, well, let's see how one compared to the other, you're not comparing apples to apples, and you get totally meaningless data. Now, in this case, they ran the desktop separately at the same time as mobile. So that gave them a little bit better of a head start, but you're still not able to compare accurately because the control is different. So how do you possibly know which button color won if you're testing 2 different button colors as the control? So make sure this doesn't happen to you. Keep the control consistent. And especially if you plan to look at across device types like mobile and desktop. So that is trend number 2 that needs to die. Don't let it happen to you. Now, number 3, this one I see absolutely all the time. It's don't run tests with acne. And what do I mean by that? Well, when we think of an A/B test, we think of what I would call a true A/B test. You have version A, and you make one element change or one difference, like button color, for example, and you change that version to version B. Very simple example. We can look at this version here, dark blue button, this version here, teal button. That would be what I would call a true A/B test. In this case, there was two things that changed from the control, which was a yellow button with black text, to the variants, which were colored buttons with white text. Well, what on earth caused the difference? Was it the black text or the button color or both? We just don't know. And that makes it a test with acne. It has multiple changes that, kind of maybe might have influenced the results. And so if we're going to run a true A/B test, what we would have needed to have done is kept this text white or this text black all the way through and shows a different color for contrast. But we need the same variables throughout all our variants where we have a test with acne. And you would be surprised how many times I see tests with acne. They happen all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't make multiple changes in an A/B test. That is okay to do. Radical redesigns are legit. You can change multiple things, many things, and that has its place if you do it right. As well, I highly recommend that if you're going to change multiple things, if you have the traffic for it, you run an MBT test, multivariant test, and you see, okay, is it the box here or the color here that makes a difference? And you can test each individual element. If you're going to lump everything together and make multiple changes, just be aware that you're not going to be able to know exactly what element change had what impact. But the evidence shows that overall, multiple changes and larger changes do tend to have a larger effect or conversion difference. So it's not a bad thing to do. You're just not able to iteratively measure each individual element. It does have its place, though, especially if you do it properly. But when you run a test with acne, especially a simple test like a button color test, you really do want to keep all the elements the same. Both the text and the button itself, in this case, should have been the same. So don't make this mistake. Don't run tests with acne. All right, number 4, this trend completely needs to die. It happens all the time. Most experimenters are guilty of it, but it completely bugs up test results. And that's stopping tests too early. So many times what will happen is an experimenter will peek at results and say, oh, goody, 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 I've only run the test for 2 days and look at this win. This is awesome. Yes, I'm declaring this test a win and I'm going to implement it right away. But what happens is if you actually let that test run long enough, which I say is 2 weeks at a minimum, because you want to round out any discrepancies with the data, especially over things like the weekend, you might actually see that that initial win tapers off or potentially even goes down. And so you want to let your tests run long enough. Now, the ideal testing time frame is about 2 to 6 weeks. Anything less, as I said, you're not going to have that solid, robust data to make your base decision on. And anything more than about 6 weeks, the data kind of starts to get muddy. And so you want to ensure that you have a large enough sample size to run your test within that 2 to 6 week time frame. Now, in the case of this button color test that we're looking at, they actually stopped the test and achieved a statistically significant effect at 85% confidence. Now, that's not terrible, but as a general rule of thumb, most experimenters want to see tests with 90% confidence or above. So you really shouldn't stop your test until you've achieved 90% confidence or above, even if it's before that 2 week time frame. You want to let it run for a minimum of 2 weeks and get a 90% or above confidence level. Now, also in this case, if they had let the test run just 2 more days, they would have achieved that 90% confidence level. But clearly the experimenters got impatient and said, goody, 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 we have a win, let's stop the test. And it kind of invalidates the test results, especially if you're reporting something like this to a client or to upper management or stakeholders, and you say, yeah, we got 85% confidence. If they know anything about testing, they're not going to be that convinced. So make sure you let the test run long enough that you get a statistically significant effect at 90% confidence or above. within that ideal 2 to 6 week time frame. So do not stop tests too early. Even if you're impatient and you see the win, let it play out. And finally, the last thing that needs to die in experimentation is thinking that simple tests, like button color tests, are stupid ones and you shouldn't be running them. I absolutely don't think that's the case whatsoever, because this test is so simple, but it shows how many things can go wrong when you don't run a test properly. And so even a seemingly simple test can hold immensely valuable learnings that you, as an experimenter, can learn from and apply to your own testing practice. So don't fall for these testing pitfalls. Make sure you navigate beyond them and make sure you learn from examples like this. Button color tests may not be the best use of resources. Testing is expensive, requires a lot of dev resources, it requires a lot of time. But if you're new to testing, you haven't run a test before, start with something simple. A button color test may be a good starting point for you. And if it's done properly, you may find that it's actually valuable and can move the needle for you. So I'm not going to say don't run button color tests, but don't run them improperly. And that goes for any test out there. No matter how simple it is, you need to run it properly. So my ultimate takeaway for you is do learn from others' mistakes and optimize upon them, because you are at the helm of the experimentation revolution and you can properly run tests that are trustworthy and that you can share with the experimentation community. All right, so in summary, what did we talk about today? 5 things that need to die. Do not run low sample tests, especially with multiple variations. Do not have different controls across your different device types and across your different tests. Do not run tests with acne. Do not peak and stop your tests too early, as tempting as it is. And don't think that seemingly simple tests like button color tests are stupid, because they can lead to so many valuable insights. Instead, run smart, simple, or not simple tests instead, but make sure that they are smart. And if you found this presentation valuable, or if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, please do get in touch. I always love to speak with fellow experimenters. I can be reached at deborah@guessthetest.com. That's my email. I'm active on LinkedIn. You can find me at Deborah O'Malley. And be sure to check out guessthetest.com, where you can find hundreds of other case studies like this, which explain valuable learnings that you can apply to your own testing practice. So thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this presentation today. I hope it was useful to you, and I look forward to seeing your properly run tests, no matter how simple they are. Bye.
This is Romo Santiago from Experiment Nation. Every week we share interviews with and conference sessions by our favorite conversion rate optimizers from around the world. So if you like this video, smash that like button and consider subscribing. It helps us a bunch.